All right, so we are on with our SANATA Who Are We research project, and this is our fantastic first session, really, in a way. So we've got Michelle Booth and Leslie Palmer. Is that right? Yes.
That's right.
Okay. And Noah Belling is here as well to help us with the interviews. Thank you very much. So I just want to welcome you all. We've got, we came up with this idea about a month or so ago, maybe it's a little bit more, just for the SANATA community, which is I'll ask Michelle also to say something about what is SANATA, but really for this group of arts therapists, just to get to know each other a little bit all over South Africa. So I'm just going to jump right in and welcome Michelle. Mm-hmm. And I just ask you, Michelle, to introduce yourself a little bit, and if you feel like it, maybe you could say something about SANATA and the background and what you feel like saying about that.
Certainly. Thanks, Amanda, and thanks, Noah, for initiating this. So I'm an art therapist, so a visual art therapist, and I trained for 2 years in Edinburgh, in Scotland. It was an amazing experience for me to be allowed to really deeply immerse myself in my studies. I think there's something about going away to study where you don't have all the distractions of everyday life in your own country, your family, whatever, and it really gives you an opportunity to throw yourself really into it, and I was very grateful for that. Also grateful to have been studying in a country where art therapy is actually quite established, and so just to kind of feel what that's like. It's quite difficult coming back into South Africa with your degree and your training and trying to figure out, well, where do I practice? How do I practice? And that's really one of the reasons why we need a national association, is that there's a small group of us. We are not widely known in the public eye, or amongst other health professionals, actually. Many of them don't understand what we do. So I think there's a role for us in building an organization that increases our profile, makes strategic alliances with other people who are also involved in similar work, engaging with the state, with the bodies that regulate our profession, engage with allied health professionals. So there's a huge amount that we can do to kind of bolster up our professional recognition and standing, so that new arts therapists entering the field have something to stand on, a foundation to stand on, that they're not having to create that foundation that many of us have had to do. I mean, you, Amanda, and Leslie, and I don't really know so much about Noah, but have had to, been part of that early time of arts therapy in the country, and really having to kind of try and figure it out, and desperately maybe holding on to each other for a little while for support. But many arts therapists, I think, when they speak, will say that they feel quite alone. And it doesn't have to be like that. It really doesn't. And I think more and more when we begin to connect and begin to share, like you are giving us a space to do now, our stories and the work that we're doing, we will start to feel part of something, and we will feel a sense of belonging and an overlap of what's possible. So that's one of the main things about SANATA, really, in my vision.
Can I just ask you a quick question?
Yes.
So for a lot of people that will be watching this, it might just be the public, they won't know. Some people look at arts therapists and think it just means art, art therapy. So could you just tell us what this includes? And
yes, so the arts cover, in the therapeutic sense, cover visual art. So that's, making images through painting, drawing, sculpture, things like that. Then we have the dramatic arts, I suppose, but using story and drama techniques, drama practices to allow clients to work in a more embodied and narrative way. We have music therapy, where therapists use music making as a process, not so much as an end in and of itself, but as a process to allow clients to explore and to discover and to create. And dance movement therapy, which also is an embodied practice of working in space with identity and relationship, and both to the body and the other, even if it's the other in ourselves. So these are all ways in which we are accessing a creative possibility in our clients, and allowing them to both have access to unconscious material that's in the psyche, as well as create and find new paths and new possibilities for themselves through these creative practices. So that's what I would kind of say. And so while we all work in slightly different ways, there is this commonality that we are using very deeply human practices that have been available to people from ancient times, of working differently, dreaming, moving, dancing.
And so every person that's registered under SANATA is actually either a drama therapist, movement therapist, art therapist, or what have I left out? Music. Yeah. And each person is separately trained in their modality. And is a specialist in their field. And then also, I just wanted to add that, for those people that will be looking eventually at maybe these videos as a database of therapists that are available, that everyone that's in SANATA is a Health Professions Council registered therapist.
Yes. So that is the bulk of our membership, Amanda, registered health professionals. We also have some categories of membership for people who are not registered, but who are interested or associated.
Okay.
We even have a student membership category, so that we invite students who are training at the moment to become part of our community already. So that by the time they step outside of their university experience, they know who we are, they can draw on our help and support, and that's very important.
And how do people,
quite overwhelming.
How do people find us? Like, if someone wanted to find an arts therapist or an art therapist, movement therapist, drama therapist, whatever, music therapist, how would they find us? Is there like a website that holds the name?
Well, we are in the process of setting up. We recently launched the sort of association SANATA in May, and so we are currently putting together a website. And one of the key things of that website will be a therapist directory. Now, not every arts therapist in South Africa works in private practice. Many people, and I think this is the other point that I want to make about the arts therapies, is that in my experience, every single arts therapist that I've met, a South African arts therapist, has a passion to contribute to the creating of a better South Africa. There's a really strong sense of wanting to make a difference. And so many of our therapists work in non-governmental organizations and in places where they are actually working in community settings, working with those who don't have access to kind of healthcare in a more traditional way. So this is a very strong part of our identity, I believe, as arts therapists in South Africa, is that, and I think that it makes us unique and differentiates us from psychology, from occupational therapy and those kinds of things, that we really have a deep commitment to wanting to change things and make a difference.
Mm.
So, you know, people will be able to also access services through the work that people are doing in these different NGOs.
Wonderful. So, Michelle, do you want to talk about art therapy and your background, like a little bit more about your work, what you do currently, that kind of thing?
Yes. So I think in the notes that you sent yesterday, or that are in your PDF, just to say a little bit that that I started making sort of spontaneous watercolor and ink drawings at some point, and I used to take them to my therapist, and they were a kind of mystery to me, these drawings, because they, you know, I discovered figures in these images that I didn't, you know, I didn't sit in front of the drawing with an intention to draw these things. I almost found these figures in my drawings. And when I took them to therapy, we began to make sense of them and to see how these figures related to what was going on in my life. And that was the beginning for me of like, oh my gosh, this is like amazing. This is a way to access something in myself that I would never have known about if I hadn't made these images. And that's really the inspiration that started me to think about becoming an art therapist. So yes, I like to work very much in the space of the unconscious, allowing an image to emerge. In art therapy, we work very much with materials and allowing materials to invite certain kinds of images. So a client doesn't have to be good at art. A client doesn't have to even know what they're going to make. As a willingness to enter into a collaboration with the paint, or with the clay, or with odds and ends of beads and whatever it is that they found in front of them, and allow the materials to suggest something. And invariably, once the first mark is made, or once the first object is placed, something then unfolds. An idea or a story even begins to emerge. So we're working very much with the imagination, with allowing the image to unfold in a sense of being really curious about what is happening here, without wanting to determine what it is. And so a lot of clients who maybe begin a little bit fearful about, oh, I'm not good at art, I can't draw, realize soon enough that that's not the point. And through the process of making images, come to either experience a sense of freedom in themselves, or an excitement about discovering more about themselves through the images that arise. And together we sit and we make sense of them. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes with certain clients, you know, there isn't the capacity to talk or to understand, and sometimes we look at them and we don't understand, and we still look at them and we still wonder about what this is. And sometimes it becomes clear later on as the therapy process unfolds. And what is marvelous about art therapy, which I think is different from some of the other modalities, is that we have a document, we have an evidence. We can go back to an image. I often hold reviews with my clients, sometimes, you know, throughout the therapy process, but especially at the end, and we lay out all these images we can see the images from the start of the process, and we can see the images from the end. And the client is usually blown away because we can actually see changes, we can see patterns emerging. And that's a wonderful gift to have that reference. And what is amazing also is that the image can hold a meaning for us in the moment of making it. And then 2 months later, we can look at that image and see another meaning that wasn't maybe apparent or wasn't there yet. But with time, we can look back and say, gosh, that was the beginning of something, which maybe we couldn't even name or see now, but now we can. And that's incredibly empowering for the client to be able to see that, and very exciting.
Wonderful. We've got a little cat that's joined us, and I just want to say that there's someone else who will be joining us shortly, just so that people know that there'll be someone coming in the middle of our session. But Michelle, where are you based now, and are you seeing people individually, or who are you?
When I came back to South Africa, I worked in Johannesburg for quite a long time, and I worked for a community-based psychological service that worked in the inner city with marginalized communities, refugees, orphans, carers, home-based care organizations, all those kinds of communities, and I loved that work immensely. And then I had a baby, and we moved to Knysna, which is where I live now in the Western Cape.
Okay.
And at the moment, I just have a private practice.
Okay. And if people want to get hold of you or come and see you, do you have any method of contact?
Yes. I have a Facebook page.
We can link it below for people.
Yes, I have a Facebook page, and you could email me at michelle@michelleBooth.co.za.
Okay.
I don't have a website yet, but I have a Facebook page.
Okay, great. So we'll put those links below on the video.
And just one more thing to say, that I am also very interested in working with the body and movement and story, and so I'm influenced by process-oriented psychology, which is an alternative called process work. And so in a session with a client, we may not only make images, and I think that's where the overlap for many of us is that I know that music therapists will often use image making. And I'm sure both of, or all three of you, are nodding your heads. And that's the thing, is that we have our primary modality, but we work in an integrated way with different ways of embodying what's going on. So that's really what I love about my work, is being able to bring in a more eclectic way of working.
Wonderful. How long have you been practicing for, Michelle?
I have been practicing for, I think it's 12 years. 12 years.
Wonderful. Well, it's so nice to see you and hear about your work. And thank you so much for sharing. I know this is just a short little bite, a little taste.
Yes.
And but thank you very much.
Thank you, Amanda.
So I'll hand over to Noah to talk to Leslie for a while.
Hi, Leslie.
Hi, Noah. Thank you for having us on this chat. It feels important to connect and hear more about each other. It was good to hear all of that, Michelle. We're doing that.
Yeah, and thank you, Michelle. That was very interesting. Yes. So, Leslie, why don't, seeing as you've listened and you've got a feel for the kinds of things to share, and maybe you had some thoughts, I'm going to let you, if you're okay with it, take the lead, and then I'll come in with some questions along the way. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Listening to Michelle reminded me of my journey, and also what arts therapists sort of 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, share. Somehow in childhood, usually adolescence, there's an engagement with the art form and a kind of a self-healing and passion arising. So for me, that was very much my adolescence. I had an incredible drama teacher at school, and she was like just light for me. She assisted me, and the drama itself assisted me through the usual troubled adolescence. And I went on to study drama at University at Wits, and then really wanted to take it further, and had never heard of drama therapy at that time. It was sort of the middle 90s. And this I've also heard so many arts therapists say, that they had this idea of creating something like drama therapy. And I didn't have a name for it, but I had done drama in education and applied theatre, and wanted to pick up psychology courses to kind of better be able to contain the work, which was very evocative. So when I was in London, I'd moved over to London, and I was looking to pick up some sort of further studies in psychology, and that was when I read for the first time the words drama therapy, and it was like, wow, yes, that's what I want to do. And I still hear that now as to people without hearing about the creative arts therapies, having this kind of idea, this bubbling inside of, wow, this work and engaging with the creative self is so healing and transforming, and there's so much potential in there. And I love that. I love that it's something that seems to arise from within us, and that we know. So I trained at Central School of Speech and Drama in London, and that was in 98. So I've been qualified about 20 years. And I spent a few years in the UK. My own story is one that is known grief and trauma, and I was very drawn to work with childhood grief. And so I found myself in London all those years ago working in the bereavement service for children, and I really loved the work. I think that the tools of drama therapy, using storytelling, story making, and ritual really lend itself to grief work. And and then at the time in South Africa, it was before the time of ARVs, and there were many children living with HIV without treatment, so a lot of death and dying associated at the time with HIV. And I felt a strong pull to come home and to start that work. So my work has always held a focus around grief and loss, and also palliative care. Worked a lot with dying children and dying parents too, and bringing in the tools of, as I say, kind of ritual and story to acknowledge, the lives that have passed. In drama and in theatre, we have this incredible capacity to say the things that didn't have a chance to be said, to create a ritual where, for whatever reason, there was maybe actual presence or just the capacity to be present at a funeral. So we can revisit those spaces and I think in quite a profound and deep way create a kind of sacred space to engage there. And like Michelle, I incorporate a lot of different tools and creative arts in general. So I use a lot of image making as well, working with objects and sand tray, and I've gone on to train as a play therapist and a family constellations therapist, and I suppose it all gets woven into one offering and do in the end what hopefully helps. And there's something I think for me about having worked with myself and with clients in this space around grief and loss and death and dying, which is also certainly for for clients and myself raised, the bigger kind of questions of what are we here on planet Earth to do, and what is this journey about? And so my work has taken me, real interest of mine is kind of into a spiritual understanding of the self. And so my work, often engages there, and supporting also adults in their capacity to be present with their whole selves, with the different layers of being. And again, creative arts lend themselves so much to that, to an expression and a discovery which is not based in the head and with what the things that we can understand and touch and feel. Which, also then, so another big passion of mine in the work is improvisation. And I run a playback theatre company called Ground Spring. We used to be called Bonfire, now we're called Ground Spring. And this is, also beautiful work with quite a community focus. So playback theatre invites people in the audience to tell stories from their lives. And then a group of improvisatory performers and music and drama therapists spontaneously in the moment tell the story back, offering hopefully something more, a transformative aspect or a witnessing, a profound witnessing. This work has taken us all over the country, to the whole SADC region, into corporate, into NGO, public spaces, schools, or sort of a range of community. And the idea that it's in hearing one another's stories that there is really the capacity for connection and social healing and transformation. So this is also beautiful work that I feel really passionate about. And even besides the performances, the sort of ongoing weekly training and development of the company itself, where we get to practice improvisation, I think it is quite therapeutic. It has, we're developing the skills every week of developing spontaneity, of presence, of being able to let go. In improvisation, you have to be in a kind of let go space, open to what's happening, to being part of a team, and trusting one another and yourself. And I'm actually about to start improvisation classes just for the public, because I think there's so much benefit to be held just in having, I'm calling it space to play, for adults to have the space to play, which I think is also in part what all of our work is about. We live in a world that is so head and so sort of what we can know and and understand, and we lose touch easily with our playfulness and our capacity to connect just with our creative, healthy side. I suppose that's also what I love about the creative arts therapist, is that we're working with the healthy side of ourselves. We're not necessarily working into the kind of the problem or the trauma. We're strengthening the healthy aspect, which is so innate, which is so there, which just needs a bit of a space to say, like, okay, let's be playful. Like you're in this frozen space right now, and let's see how we can reflect that, whether that's, with a posture of the body, or a splash of paint on paper, or, a sound on a drum, whatever it is. Let's give that expression, and then trust the creative, the metaphor, the symbol, or the creative expression will have its own movement. It will have its own transformation when we dive in. So I really love the work. I think I've rambled around in a big circle, but all to say that this work is I learn from it like every day of my working life.
Thank you for what you've said so far. That's so clear and powerful. I'm curious to ask a couple of questions. The one is, do you think the South African context has a particular expression that's different to the rest of the world that you might have experienced, or how might your work particularly take a particular shape because of the South African context?
Yeah, so I only worked in the UK for a couple of years, working on the NHS before returning home. And certainly when I returned in the early noughties, there was very little established in the way of the creative arts therapies. There was just a smattering of us, some wonderful drama therapists, which I'm eternally grateful for. And we built quite a strong community. I think drama therapy, maybe by the nature of drama itself, which is collaborative, and we've I think we've always had quite a strong community, and we've found our way together, working in a South African context with a kind of international trainings. Many of us trained in the States and in the UK. I think what is here innately is perhaps more of a sense of community and collaborative creative potential. So I've always felt, in working in a whole variety of really diverse population groups, that there's something about all of us South Africans that feels that the old ways of interacting, of being together socially, is maybe not as distant as in other countries. I don't know if I can even say that, but certainly here in South Africa, the gathering in a circle. For many years I ran something called the Firemaker Project, which was very much this. It was about remembering the old ways of what we did when we gathered around fires, how we made music together, how we told stories, how we really know in ourselves a way of keeping communities strong and healthy. And it is about, when we gather together in ritual or in creative expression, dancing together, singing together, that community stays strong. And what always struck me doing the training was that it was very fresh, this knowledge. So it might be kind of our generation that have, learned to put the TVs on at night and focus rather on a screen. But just the generation before, we're very much still gathering around fires, telling stories. And with it being so kind of fresh, it's so graspable. So I find working with groups incredible, and individuals incredible here. It's like that wisdom, it's just here. It's we can touch it. It doesn't require a lot of work. There's some I don't know, it feels like so long ago that I even worked in the UK, so I can't really kind of comment about the difference. I suppose we've all become South African creative arts therapists with our way of practicing, but I feel like the work is definitely beyond me or even what I bring. It has its own life. Maybe people are experiencing that all around the world. There's also such a desire I found, especially if I think in the work of Bonfire that became Ground Spring, a desire to hear one another's stories, to understand one another, to be transformed, to be touched by our shared humanity. So we hear so much about, the world that still lives so separate, but I think there's also such a desire to hear and grow and be touched by one another. Just needing the spaces in order for that to happen more, which companies like Ground Spring provide, a space to share stories and to be acknowledged. So not sure if that answers your question. Certainly through the WITS program, so now it's possible to train as a drama therapist in South Africa through WITS. And certainly, not that I'm one of the teaching internship supervisors, but have dialogued over the years about the course content and what would be included and how we think about it. And I think they've done an incredible job of bringing together, all the different kind of drama therapy programs and teachings and underpinnings together with also something very fresh and unique that's South African. And I suppose we all end up practicing, also just from who we are, and I think it would be a very interesting research project to look at really, what is this practice become? Like how long is it? 30 years in or 25 years in about?
Yeah.
So I know that you touched on your communities or who you're working with. Can you summarize that for us and add to that if you've left anything out, who you work with?
Yeah. So like Michelle, I worked for many years running an NGO in what was a national NGO in the creative arts therapies. And then after having children, decided to focus more there. So I'm now running a private practice in Cape Town, and I work with children, adolescents, and adults. I have a focus on bereavement work and death and dying work, but I really work with anybody that feels that creative arts therapy and drama therapy particularly would, help them to wake up, basically, and transform something in themselves that they're wanting to look at. So I work sometimes in tandem with clinical psychologists where there might be a kind of a stuckness or something. We know the creative arts therapies work quickly and deeply, so referrals come from all around. But I'm here in my room in Kenilworth and Cape Town. And my website is www.presenceinaction.co.za.
Lovely.
And my number will be listed below.
Thank you. Is there anything you want to add to what you've so beautifully shared with us? And I'm also curious, what's next? Where to from here? Do you have a dream still, a current inspiration, passion? You've mentioned a lot of your where to next.
So as my small people are getting a bit older and there's a bit more space, I would like to focus more energy on developing Groundspring. The potentiality in playback theatre, I think, is immense, and I feel like we need to be used more. So I would really love to put some energy into letting more people know about Groundspring, and getting work in organizations and doing community work. This is particularly what's needed in Cape Town, is like some bridges, being built, people hearing and understanding each other on a deeper level. So Groundspring is definitely going to be a focus. I've also, through my own mothering journey, decided I really want to work with mothers. I want to start a mothers group, potentially even a prenatal group for mums that are becoming, to start looking at some of the huge psychic shifts and transformation, and that sort of, not that one can really anticipate it, but maybe to bring tools to support moms. And then the space to play for adults. This is definitely burning inside. I see it all around, that there's quite a lot of conscious dance happening in Cape Town, which is beautiful. And I think improvisation will bring a whole new set of skills for life, like being able to really be in the moment and present and wake up and engage. I don't know if we've got enough time to really engage with each other playfully. Where does one do that? I don't know. So I've always got a lot burning. Those will be the next projects.
Thank you very much for sharing. It's wonderful. And I also want to add, every time I hear from you, from Michelle, when Amanda, you and I had our conversation, just these points of connection, and how another piece that really seems common to us is that the arts
does lend itself towards bigger questions of existence and almost a spiritual view. And there's so many threads of commonality that I find it very inspiring, or just interesting, really. I definitely feel a sense of greater connection through hearing different people's stories. Yeah. Thank you. Amanda, do you want to take it from there?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Leslie. That was beautiful hearing your work. It sounds so amazing. And sometimes I wish that we could all be each other's therapists, but unfortunately we're all peers.
Thank you.
But really, I would be there in a shot.
I want to come and see Leslie. I want to do therapy with her.
Yeah. So the person that was going to be joining us is not going to be joining us. So this is us for today. But I just wanted to ask Michelle if she wanted to add anything about the art therapy training that I think might be available.
Yes, that is what I would like to talk about. So after many years of trying to establish a master's in art therapy in South Africa, we have finally managed to find a home for ourselves at the University of Pretoria. Unfortunately, we probably won't be able to begin next year. There have been just some administrative delays with the Health Professions Council and the university, but everything is on track, and so I believe that 2021 will be our first year of intake. We're going to have a very difficult job of deciding that first cohort, because there are many people who would like to train as art therapists. And I don't know how we're going to decide who to take and who not to take. But the wonderful thing is that we are going to be in our own department with the music therapists. It will be a creative arts therapies department, and there is an agreement with the university that over time and when the need arises, other modalities can be included. So in principle, there's space for dance movement therapy and another drama therapy training if necessary.
Wonderful.
So the university has created this space for the current music therapy program to be transformed into an arts therapy program with specializations in the different fields. And yeah, it's super exciting.
Wonderful.
At the moment, it will be run as a we're calling it a modular course, but it really is. It enables people to predominantly study from where they currently live and come up to Pretoria for 3 block weeks during the year, I think of 10 days or so each. And then they will set up their placements where they currently live, and they'll be supervised from there. So that is the model that currently operates with music therapy training, and we'll be probably following that same model, mostly because there are not enough arts therapists actually based in Gauteng, but also that it may actually allow more people to have access to the training. So yeah, we'll definitely be putting something out in the public realm when we have final confirmation.
Okay, so if people have questions, if people have questions about how to become an art therapist, would you be the person to contact, or?
Yes, they certainly can, and as soon as our SANATA website is up, there'll be all that information on the. In fact, currently we have a SANATA website where that information is available, but I think rather wait for the new website, and then everything will be clear there.
Okay, wonderful.
About what is needed, what you need to, what are the prerequisites for entry.
Fantastic. All right. Well, that's very exciting to be together for this time. I feel so happy and grateful that we could, through via the internet, hang out for an hour with each other
It's amazing.
And just share this with whoever else
Right.
is interested in what we're up to. It's really wonderful. So thank you all for the work that you're doing and the roles that you're playing and pioneering and, you know, bringing this field kind of into another level of work. And everyone else that's out there that may not have been named, that were influences of us getting to where we are. And we'll see you again. We'll see you at another point in time. So we'll be on this project. If you can encourage other people to come in for 15 minutes or something to share a bit about their practice, that would be great. We've got slots on Thursdays that we can send out to people for a little while. And the video will be available, and it will be eventually uploaded onto a SANATA YouTube link, but we're still also going to be making that channel.
Wonderful.
Thank you,
everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.